What's going on, guys? My name is Jake Pearley. I'm a professional cinematographer and colorist, and welcome to my first Davinci Resolve tutorial on this channel. Super happy to be doing this. I've had a lot of requests for a tutorial on this specific shot that I posted a while back on my Instagram, which you can find here. Today we're going to be looking at how to create a look and a mood using color contrast and what that means. So we're going to be using some pretty simple techniques, nothing too fancy, no crazy special effects. You can actually do this all in the free version of Resolve except for the noise reduction. Everything we're going to be doing, like I said, is very basic. We're going to take this look that we've created with this one clip and then apply it to a different clip that's very similar, shot in the same scene, just a different time of day. You'll notice as soon as we apply that grade, it looks nothing like how the original shot did. So we're going to look at how to fix that and how to match these two clips, which is, again, one of the hardest parts of coloring is shot matching. Anybody can create a look, but what really sets you apart is how you can shot match from one clip to another. So we're going to look at that. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Check me out on Instagram. I'm posting a lot of tutorials, breakdowns, behind the scenes videos there as well. So you don't want to miss out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let's get into today's video. Okay, so hopping into this, first thing we want to do is kind of build out our node layout, our node tree for this one. Okay, so fast forwarding through all that, I'm just going to walk you through this node tree we have built out. We have noise reduction up top, which I didn't label. We have contrast, saturation, balance, look, hues, skin, look adjustment, vignettes. We're going to have an inside and outside here. Then we have one more vignette, which is a gradient. Then we have global adjustments, sharpening, and grain. We're going to go through this kind of one by one and walk through the entire process. You guys are going to be in my head for the entirety of this. So first step is adding some contrast. And what I'm going to do for that one, this clip is a little, I don't know, it's a little different than what you normally see because a lot of it's sitting so low, it's not really leveled out, it's not balanced. So what we're going to do is bring down the lift just a tad, keep bringing up the gain. We don't want to push it too far. I think this looks pretty good right here. And let's also go ahead and add a little bit of saturation here so we can see where everything's sitting as far as the white balance goes. And looking at this, the vector scope is a pretty good indicator along with the waveform in the parade that it's probably a little bit cool. So we're going to warm that up in our balance node. I'm going to go offset and just start warming this up. So already that's looking better. Yeah, I mean, all we've done is add contrast and saturation, and it's already halfway there. So next thing we want to do, I'm usually going to go into look. So this is where I was talking about the color separation, color contrast. Color contrast is when your image, lighting contrast, you have good shadows and highlights. Color contrast is the same thing. We're looking for opposites because opposites attract. And if you look at the vector scope, that is the best way to get your indicator of how your colors are sitting. What we want is these colors, we're already halfway there. You want those colors sitting opposite of each other on the vector scope. How are we going to do that? Very simple. We're going to go into our hue versus hue curves. I'm going to be doing this as a mixture between mouse and keyboard and the Resolve panel. I'm going to take our blue hue here, start pumping it up to get that blue more into the cyan. And as you can already see, we're pushing those colors pretty opposite of each other. I'm also going to do a little bit of work with the skins here and make sure it's sitting good, not too magenta, not too green. All right, that already is, that's 90% of the work we're going to be doing. So the hues, as you can tell, this node, very simple adjustment, took it from that more blue to more of a cyan. And that really just helps put the image in the same world that we're going for. Back into the look node, this is where we want to accentuate what we just started working on. So in the gain, going to be working with my primaries alone here. Just working with the primaries, pulling a little bit of teal blue into the highlights, gain, gamma, pushing a little bit more skin, and then as you can see, his skin's sitting pretty low in the exposure. His skin's pretty dark, so that's why we're getting so much of that effect from the lift. So I'm going to reset that, and we're just going to play with this a little bit and see where it looks good. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. Not too strong, not too harsh. Going back into the gamma, moving it around slightly because we do kind of want that not perfect skin tone because we're going to be giving it somewhat of a look. So we don't want it to look just like natural. That's not our goal here. We're trying to create a look. So mainly I'm just keeping an eye on the shadows, and we're about to really dial this in with the log wheels. For now, let me see. I think all I want to do is on the hues here. I'm just going to work with hue versus sat. Bump in here, hue versus hue versus sat. I want to pull up some saturation in the skin, and we're going to bring this up too much right now. We're going to pull it back later. So again, blowing up some of that cyan saturation in the sky. You can see right here how much we're doing to separate this image with color. Now what I want to do is qualify his skin. This is not going to be the typical kind of qualifier you're going to see. Oftentimes it's doing a whole bunch of work with what you qualified. Here we're doing some pretty simple things. So I'm going to highlight this, and it's on black and white highlight, reset that. I'm going to make sure we get all of his skin. The good part about this image is it's pretty simple. It's got like skin tones and then the sky. It's okay that we've got a little bit of that grass there and his hat. They're the same color, pretty much the same luminance, so we want to run with that. Now we're going to denoise this just to clean up that qualifier, clean up that selection. That's probably all we need to do. Also, let's go ahead and pick a slightly better frame. Yeah, I like this frame a lot more. So make sure we can get that iris in there. And again, highlight, make sure we have a good clean selection. Let me see if we can do anything to clean up. Yeah, see, that's cleaning up a little bit right there. Softness is fine. Yeah, I think we're good. I think that's all we need. And that's pretty clean right there. Okay, so let's keep on pushing this image. Let's see. Instead of primaries, we're going to bump into log now because we get to really dial in our low range and high range, which is what separates log from your primary wheels. So at this point, let's see. Let's take the low range. Let's see where we're affecting. Let's dial that low range back some, so we're really only affecting the lower part. Pull it up some. Great. We'll reset that level so we don't make any adjustments yet. Now onto the highlights. We're going to pull the highlights down some. As you can see, that's doing almost nothing to his skin because the high range is set a little high. So we're going to keep playing with that. We'll bring it up and pull that high range down some more. Now we can see we're starting to adjust the highs. So we'll reset the level again. And now we'll start pushing that color around. So again, we'll put some more orange, or I guess just the skin tone color, into the midtones and the shadows. I think we need to bring a little bit of green. They're kind of too magenta right now, so we're going to do the opposite. And let's see. That's looking pretty good. And then for our highlights, yeah, I think a little bit more yellow, red for the highlights as well. So disabling that, not doing much, but it really is just balancing out his skin. Another thing we're going to do with that skin node is we're going to go into our curves again, our hue versus hue. And let's just make sure that his skin is sitting where it should be. So moving some of that red around, messing with the red and yellow on the curves here. I'm just going to dial this in. Keeping an eye on the vector scope here, but also just kind of giving it, just what your eye sees. Just kind of go off of your instinct here. Hue versus sat, pulling that down some. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to go back into our primary wheels. I'm going to do maybe just a little bit of cleanup. Keep pushing the right colors in where they need to go. That's good. And then I also want to bring up the exposure on his skin some. Yeah. So that's just going to help pull him out a little more from the background. Let's see. So now we're going to hop into the look adjustment node, and all three of these nodes in the parallel node are being blended together and then sent out to the look adjustment node. Let's just take our offset, move it around some, see where it looks good. See, we're really bringing the skin out. Okay, I'm going to reset that. And our gamma, we're going to push a little more orange and pull our lift a little more towards blue. Back in the orange for the gamma. Keep balancing that. And then in the highlights, again, I should say, Yeah, I kind of like that. It's almost putting that skin in sort of that green yellow in the highlights. I like what it's doing with it there. Okay, so now we're going to come back and we're going to really dial this look in just a second, but I want to also work on the vignette here. The image is pretty flat overall, and we want the viewer's eye to immediately go to this gentleman's eye. So we're going to make a circular window, give it a little bit of an angle here, and then be sure to soften it, I mean almost all the way all the time. You do not want to see that little halo effect that you can have if you don't soften out that window enough. So now we're going to invert it, and that means that this current node that we're working with is affecting everything on the outside of this vignette we just made, and then the outside node is affecting everything on the inside. So the way to make that outside node, like I just showed you, you can either press Alt-O, I believe it is. You can set an outside node. You can set that as a keyboard shortcut, or you can make another node. Take this blue square, because this is what's going to send the key information. You're sending the key information to the next node, which right off the bat, you see you're just getting the same thing. If you go into the input, or so the node key, then you invert it here. Now it's basically the same thing as an outside node. So back into here. Let's go ahead and bring the exposure down a little bit. We'll probably grab it based on what I'm seeing in the scopes, kind of in the middle. A little higher. We'll pull that down a little bit, and then we'll go into our outside node, which is technically the inside, and we'll pull this one up some, probably from a slightly lower point. Yeah, and I can see that node's a little, or that window's a little bit small. I want it to be bigger, just because you can kind of see that haloing effect there. And it's a little bright for me, so let's pull that back down some. That's all right there. This gradient node right here is actually going to be used in our next clip. I'm going to show you why when we get to that. So now we're back into our global adjustments. We can see through some of the changes we've made, our vector scope is showing that the image, the blues are sitting more towards blue instead of cyan, which is what we're going for. So back into curves, hue versus hue. Let's pull that blue a little more towards cyan. And that's looking pretty good. And let's see, looking at it, I think we could actually stand to use a little more contrast. And actually in the skin node, there's something that's kind of like rustic and just grungy about this look that we're after, and I think kind of the whole scene sets a mood for it. Usually for skin, what we'll do is we'll pull back on some of the detail, but in this case I actually want to bring it up some. So we're gonna do, let's see, hop over here, mid-tone detail, or if you have a panel, you can just turn it on the knob, and we'll pull this up some. And again, we're only in the skin node right now, so we're only affecting skin. Pulling it up to 30. If I reset that, yeah. Again, back up to, let's go too far, and then we'll pull it back. 45, a little harsh, and then right around 25 I think is good. So there's 25, reset. I like it how it is. We can really see a lot of the detail here, and it'll be even more clean whenever we throw on the noise reduction. All right, so one thing I want to do at this point is continue to add a little more contrast. So in our global adjustment node, this is affecting everything up until this point. We're going to pull a point here, a point here, and we're just going to pull this down some, pull the shadows down, and then our highlights, work this around, pull those up. That's way too harsh. So right around here, that's looking pretty good. Then I'm also going to pull the gamma up a little bit, and then lift down. And gamma up, and I'm kind of liking that. So one thing that I also did was pull up the saturation a little bit too far in my opinion. So back into our hue versus hue, make sure that we have that sitting cyan, then hue versus sat. We're going to pull this down, and then also pull the skin back some, mainly just the red, because that's where it's overbearing in my opinion. So that's just what we've done in the last node, just the global adjustment right here. Just when you think it can't get better, do a little work, really dial it in, and it's looking really, really good. So now we're going to add some sharpening. Pull this down to about 0.47. And then let's really punch in here and let's see what the noise reduction is doing. Really, this isn't overly noisy. It's not that bad right now, but let's go ahead. Frames, we're gonna set this to 3, leave all this where it is. Temporal threshold, I'm gonna pull this up to about 6.4. We're gonna unlink spatial threshold, pull this up to about 8, and yeah, it still did a great job cleaning this one up. So that looks outstanding. I mean, it's as clean as it could possibly be. And if we play it through, you'll see, and we're not getting any kind of artifacts from that key that we pulled earlier. It looks outstanding. And again, just back to the original. So yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job here of creating a lot of contrast and exposure, but also in color. So one thing I will do, this is just a full clip, but if we had just a little segment here, we would probably want to take this window here and then track it, and resolve tracking is outstanding. Have a preset for track forward, press that, and then just look at the points. You can't ask for better tracking there. So no need to continue with that. So there's that clip. Now, as promised, let's look what happens whenever we take this grade and we bring it onto a similar clip. Same person, same scene, just that the sun's a little higher. So what happens whenever we copy and paste this grade? Doesn't really look how we wanted it to. First thing I'll do, let's go ahead and take this mask, readjust it, and I'm actually going to reset the curves here on both the inside and the outside node. First off, we want to go back to where we started putting this clip here into a Rec 709 look, into just adding contrast and saturation. So that starts here. So we're going to highlight this node and we're going to see what's wrong with it. Clearly, the scopes aren't quite sitting where they should. So we're going to take our offset, pull this down. It's looking a little better. Let's bring our gamma up. Lift down, gamma up. Let's bring our gain down some, but not too much, because as you can see on the scopes here, and just looking at the image, it's a little blown out in the highlights, which is fine. We're going to be able to work with that. So right around here, and again, I have a highlight on. I'm just looking at the first node, just putting the contrast where it needs to be. Then saturation looks okay, and then temp. Let's pull the temperature back a little bit, because the last one was actually a little too cool. This one we really just want to make look natural at this point. And I mean, I like the way this looks, but for the rest of the process of the look we built to work, this just has to look balanced and level. Let's see. So we're not looking for all these to line up perfectly back here, because the sky isn't perfectly white. So they're not gonna be level. And then again, there's not really much white or black here, so you kind of just gonna have to go off your eye. We're gonna mess with our tint, and it looks like it could be a little magenta, so that's looking pretty good now. If we uncheck that highlight, look how much better we're sitting already. Let's pull up our other image. So looking at these two images, one thing that is clearly off is the hue and the exposure. So this is where your vector scopes are really going to come in handy here. What I'm going to do is start tweaking the hues here in the hues node. Actually, no, I'm not going to do it in the hues node. I'm going to do it in the global adjustment node, sorry, because that's going to mean that everything we've worked with over here stays the same. We're not changing any of this. So we're really just messing with the balancing of the image and then the global adjustments. And that helps keep things consistent. So our hue versus hue, going to curves, and let's make sure this image is sitting generally where the other one was. Pull back some of that saturation. Good. And then for the red issue we have, let's see. Now this is also going to be affecting the skin tones because they lie within that yellow and red range. Turn off the split screen for a second so we can get a better look at his skin. Okay, that's looking pretty good right there. Now, the highlights are still really, really overblown. There's a couple ways to tweak that, but for efficiency's sake, we're just going to go into high soft and pull that down a little bit. It's going to soften it off a little bit. So that's looking better. Now, another thing I want to do is work on the contrast and the exposure, comparing it to the image we just graded. Also this grass here, if we wanted to, we could set another parallel node and we could qualify it, make sure it's kind of fitting in with that skin. But right now we're just going to go ahead and use the one we have and work with it with the skin. So I think we could use a little more magenta. I'm going to push that there. Let's pull down the saturation just slightly. Okay. So I think that's looking good. Now let's go ahead and work on our global exposure, global adjustment node for the exposure here. And let's see, that's pulling it closer. That makes sense. And again, they're not going to match up perfectly because this one's shot, I would assume, in blue hour. The sun's already set. This one, the sun's still relatively high. I would say it hasn't quite gone behind this mountain range back there. So let's go ahead and one thing we can do to help put these in the same world. Okay, so now we're hopping back into this gradient node, which I promised to be getting back to. Here's what I'm going to use to really manipulate the exposure of the image. So we're going to take this here, going to flip it, add some softening. Let's see what we're looking at. That's pretty good. Now we're going to go into our curves, grab a point somewhere in the middle, probably a little bit higher, and pull back on that. And that's going to, yeah, I like what that's doing. So that's just kind of taking some of the sting off of that field here. And sometimes, I mean, just for creative decision, it's okay to push that beyond what would look real. So we could tweak this and make it look like it's 100% natural, or we could just go all the way in the other direction and make it look almost fake. So that's really up to creative discretion. At this point, let's look at our two images. I'd say this one is still a little bit hot, so we'll go into our gamma, pull it down some, gain up, lift up, gamma down. And yeah, I mean the mountain range, honestly, I don't know why it's so zoomed out. The mountain range in the back here is probably sitting around the same exposure, at least as far as it should be. We can still continue tweaking that hue a little more. We'll push that blue a little more cyan, and then pull back some on the saturation. So yeah, that was pretty good. Now compared to what it was, which was here, I would say, that's a much more realistic, transition from image to image. One thing I would fix is like his skin is for some reason just super saturated here. There's a couple ways to fix that. We'll just go into that skin node. We'll take our hue versus sat and we'll pull some of that red out, and that fixed it up. Yeah. So now, yeah, I would say, I mean, we're doing all we can to recover those highlights and it still looks natural. If you wanted to, you could take this vignette that we had saved from the previous one. We could make it much bigger. Let's see here. Soften it out a little bit more. Now, we'll pull this down slightly. Sorry, we're in the wrong node. Back in here, we'll pull this down to give it more of a vignette. It's looking pretty good. And then let's bring him back up some in the outside node. Yeah, I like that. So this is a 3 windows we made for our gradient, really just shaping the light of this image. And honestly, I really like that a lot. That's disabled and back on here. It really brings a lot of pop to the image, and that actually also lets us bring down the gamma some more in the final node, that global adjustments node. Okay, so just like that, we have created a look, this look, applied it to this shot, and fixed it, made it look the same. We didn't really adjust the look that we built. We just made sure that the images were balanced to start with. So for example, if we took our balance node and we highlighted it from here, this is the balanced image of the second shot, and this is the balanced image of the first shot. So exposure wise, the majority of the image, the subject of the image, is sitting where it should be. And that's that. That's a good way to go back and make sure that your image is balanced and that the shots are going to match well. So looking at them two again, put them in split screen, and let's go full cinema viewer here. Yeah, I mean, I would say these shots fall pretty much in the same. They should belong next to each other. Maybe we could just improve by making the crop look a little more magenta, but I don't mind the way it sits. So that is it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what other tutorials you guys want to see in the future. And again, follow me on Instagram. Reach out to me. I respond to every single message. Ask me questions. I'd love to help, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.